Now we come to the next session, and it's my pleasure to introduce this next session and our distinguished speaker. I'm chairing this session. My name, for those who want to make a note of it, is David Howell, and I'm President of the Royal Commonwealth Society and the Council of Commonwealth associations and groups in this country. But we're going to move on to the future, post-Millennium goals, post-MDG framework, and David Hallam, our speaker, is at the centre of this. He has been head of the DFID's UN and Commonwealth Department, and he works now on the post-MDG framework. He's done a lot of other things as well. At Downing Street, he's been seconded to advise, and he's also somehow managed to get time to advise the Swedish Ministry of Foreign Affairs as well. I don't understand how you fitted that in. And you've also been in the Cabinet Office on the Defence and Overseas Secretariat, and you've had lots of experience in the Middle East. So we are extremely lucky to share your wisdom, and the floor is yours.
Lord Howell, thank you very much, and thank you everybody for having me here today. It's a great honour and pleasure to be addressing you today. I'm here to speak, as Lord Howell said, about the successor goals to the MDGs, the post-2015 development goals or sustainable development goals. But I thought I should start off by saying a few words about the Millennium Development Goals themselves and why we feel that they were so important. And firstly, none of the targets in the Millennium Development Goals were new. They had all been agreed internationally in the United Nations and all pretty much ignored. What happened with the Millennium Development Goals was that they were put in a package, and that package got real political momentum, and it drove development cooperation around the world. And we think that the reason that happened was absolutely to do with that package. There were a few goals, they were simple to understand, and they were a focused set of issues that people, voters, in both developed countries and developing countries could care about and understand. And what that package provided was a compelling organising framework for development cooperation. And through that, it led to accountability, and an accountability that had not been there in the past. As I said, these goals weren't new, the targets weren't new, but there was an accountability that came with the MDGs, and that provided accountability at many levels, subnational, national, and above all international, in ensuring that we held each other's feet to the fire in doing all that we could to achieve those goals. And there's been lots said about the progress that has been made under the Millennium Development Goals. Personally, most of that was due to national actions by national governments, and much of it would have happened anyway. And let's get that on the table and be honest and open about that. But that was assisted, and especially important for the poorest countries, by a huge uplift in development cooperation, and within that, a big uplift in official development assistance. And speaking from a UK point of view, I have absolutely no doubt that our reaching 0.7% of GNI as ODA, and the multi-party commitment that we have to that and to poverty eradication, stems from the MDGs and the political resonance that they have had in the UK, and that's been the case in many, many countries. So, that's the MDGs. The post-2015 development goals are going to be different. First of all, the Rio conference, the member states of the United Nations agreed on a set of sustainable development goals that would incorporate all of the issues from the MDGs and complete that job that was undone or unfinished, but also include new issues with a world of sustainable development, not just development. And critical to that was a concept that the next goals would be universal. Now, in principle, the MDGs were universal, but they were essentially about issues that required development cooperation and action in the poorest countries. The Sustainable Development Goals will require action in all countries, and that's a fundamental shift. Since the Rio conference, there's been the high-level panel, which Prime Minister David Cameron of the UK chaired alongside President Yudhoyono of Indonesia and President Sirleaf of Liberia. And that panel gave an example of what an inclusive framework could look like that addressed all of the new issues that would need to be included to move from the Millennium Development Goals to Sustainable Development Goals. There's been a huge global consultation, including consultation with citizens. Something like 5 million individual people have contributed to this and produced a list of the priorities that they want to see. And many of those priorities are very familiar to us. Top of the list in nearly every country is education, followed by health. Jobs, I think, comes third around the world. But after that comes honest and transparent government. So bringing in a new dimension. And of course, all of those issues around environmental sustainability and economic sustainability that weren't so well addressed in the MDGs as well. After that, there's been an open working group, a United Nations working group, which has produced an initial proposal for what the next goals could look like. And next year we'll move into formal negotiations to agree the goals at a summit in September. So where are we? Well, this open working group proposal has much that's good about it. It's got goals and targets that are really strong on eradicating extreme poverty, completing the unfinished business of the MDGs. It has a strong expression of sustainable development with actions in all countries. It's stronger than the Millennium Development Goals on gender equality, on accountable government, and on climate change. So there are many, many positive aspects to this new proposal and how it expresses this concept of universality. But there is a lot of work to do before we have a framework that will have the power of the MDGs. First of all, quite simply, the targets in this framework need more work. They're weak on economic growth. They confuse in many places what is actually a sustainable development target with a means of implementation action. Some of the targets are unclear. Some of them don't really represent the state of the art in international technical discussions on where we should be heading over the next period of time. And there are three main concerns with the totality of the framework that's presented by the Open Working Group. Firstly, the Open Working Group have proposed 17 goals and 169 targets. Now, the MDGs, as many of you will know, had 8 goals and 21 targets. Can you imagine 169 targets with perhaps 500 indicators in total representing the totality of the effort? This is unmanageable, we believe. It's unmanageable in the UK. We feel it would be unmanageable in any country in the world. And the risk there is that then we lose what the MDGs had, that the goals are ignored or perhaps partially implemented. And 169 targets and 17 goals, it lacks that simplicity, that communicability, that political resonance that we had with the MDGs. So if we lose that implementability and if we lose that political inspiration, the risk is that we lose what is probably the most important element, which is the accountability. And that was the big power. It was the accountability, and especially international accountability, that came with the MDGs, and we want to replicate in the Sustainable Development Goals. So looking forwards, well, firstly, it's vital that we keep the breadth of issues. The Sustainable Development Goals will be different than the MDGs. They have to include more issues, and they have to include a broader range of issues. But it's still possible to keep that breadth, but also condense and distill that into something that is more implementable and is more compelling and will lead to the accountability that we need to have domestically and internationally on the next agenda. Before I finish speaking, I just wanted to mention the role of parliaments in all of this. And we see two distinct phases. Firstly, there's now until September 2015, whilst we're negotiating these goals. And during that period, we hope that parliaments around the world and parliamentarians such as yourselves will raise ambition, work to engage domestic constituencies and engage your executives to make sure that when those New York negotiators think about what they're going to agree, they're maximising their ambition and they're batting hard to achieve the strongest goals for your national priorities. And secondly, there'll be a phase after the goals are agreed, and of course parliamentarians have have two key roles there, which I'm probably the least qualified person in this room to mention. But one of them is your role as lawmakers on implementation of the goals. And secondly, of course, the fundamental role of parliaments in holding governments to account here in the UK and internationally and nationally for implementing those goals and making sure that we achieve a truly sustainable future. I'll stop there, Lord Howell. Thank you.
David, thank you very much indeed for both the clarity and the brevity. Now, the floor is open for discussion of these crucial issues and the way they're being developed and taken forward.